All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:01 on this lovely Wednesday afternoon, the day before our grant portal opens for the BEAD program. So tomorrow's a big day. We're very excited about it. Today, we are going to kick off this webinar that will go into detail about everything that you need to know about applying for BEAD when the portal opens tomorrow. But first, I really want to extend a sincere thank you to everyone that is applying for BEAD and your commitment to improving broadband across Colorado. We definitely recognize that it takes a lot of time and effort to submit a comprehensive application for BEAD or any grant for that matter. And so we really appreciate the offer and or the effort, and we look forward to reviewing your applications and working together as we try to ensure a more connected future for all of Colorado. So let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about some of the items we'll go over today. I'll start off by talking about a brief overview of the program, and then we'll go into what to expect from the portal. Megan will go into the mapping tool. We'll have Helen provide an overview of the grant guidelines, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. About that, though, we do have a lot of content to go through this afternoon. So in the best interest of time efficiency, we will take a limited number of questions at the end of each section, which you can initiate by raising your hand, or if you have questions, you can put it in the chat. But again, there will also be a dedicated Q&A at the end if you're able to wait. Also, if you have any questions for the NTIA, go ahead and ask, and the CBO will address those in our FAQ. All right, let's talk about where we're at with BEAD and kind of an overview of the program. I think at this point, if you're on this call today, you understand the importance of BEAD. But as a refresher, this is part of the Biden administration's IIJA Act. And what it means for Colorado is that Colorado was awarded a lot of money, $826.5 million, to invest in broadband infrastructure that will help us with universal coverage by 2027, which is a big goal of everyone's here at the CBO. So it's a very exciting opportunity that will completely change the landscape of broadband in Colorado. And it all begins tomorrow when the application portal opens. All right, some legal jargon and disclaimers. Really what this slide is about is the program parameters and that they align with NTIA's BEAD NOFO. We're not giving legal advice, and we encourage you to consult your own legal counsel. If you have any questions about this, please refer to the NTIA's BEAD website. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Allie Terry from our CBO team. Good morning, Allie. Good afternoon, Allie. It's now afternoon. So the grants portal is opening tomorrow. Give us some highlights on what the applicants can expect to see.
Thanks, Jonas. Yeah, the day is flying by. So the CBO has created the Advanced Grants portal to help provide a streamlined application process. The portal will guide you through each step. It'll provide clear instructions on the information that's required, and it'll allow you to manage your application and track the progress of it as the application and evaluation moves forward. Next slide. So when you first click on the portal login link, you'll be directed to this page. This is the page that's going to allow you to log in either with an existing account or to create a new account. So for most people, you're going to click on Not a Member to create a new account. For anyone that has an existing login for a CPF grant, please reach out to Ali within the next couple of days with your taxpayer ID number. We can actually link your accounts behind the scenes so you're able to use just a single login for CPF and for BEAD. The registration process should only take you just a couple of minutes, and you'll be able to get into your application right away. Next slide. So once you've clicked on New Member, you're going to be directed to this screen. So there are a couple of pieces of information that you're going to want to know. The first is your taxpayer ID number. It's the number that's going to be associated with your applications, and it's really important that you have your accurate taxpayer ID number. So don't make one up just to keep on moving. This is the number that's going to be connected with your grant applications and your account within the grant management system. And as you're registering, you're going to need to make just a couple of decisions. So the first is whether or not you're going to be the primary contact for the organization. The primary contact is the person who's going to approve other users' registrations. And the second is whether or not you're a signature authority for the grant. The signature authority is the person who can legally enter into contracts on behalf of the organization. You may be one, you may be both. Each person that you want to have access to the application. So maybe you want one person to be entering information, another person may be uploading documents. They're all going to need to go through the same registration process. Once you register and submit the form, you're going to get a welcome email, and that email will give you a link to create a login. So just as a note, because I did this wrong a million times, your username is not actually your email address. Your username is going to be in the bottom of that welcome to CBO email. Next slide. So the system is going to allow for multiple people to be working on an application at the same time. So for example, if you want your bookkeeper working on the financial sections while your project engineer is working on project design, you'll be able to do that. Each person that you want to have access will go through the registration process, and they need to know the taxpayer ID number of the organization to have access to the applications. The first person from the organization that logs in is going to be automatically designated a primary contact. And that person is going to have the ability to approve or deny access for additional users. The primary contact is going to get emails as notifications that other users have requested access. And then at the top right-hand corner of the screen, that's where they will go to approve additional users from their organization through the approval dropdown on that right side of the portal. Next slide. So this is the guts of the application. Once you get into the application, you're going to be able to see all of the different sections lined up on the left-hand side. Some of the information for your organization may auto-populate based on what you've entered in previous screens, but the majority of the information is going to need to be entered for every application. And of course, you can apply multiple times using the Apply Now button. It'll create a new application for you. One of the fields that you'll fill in for each application is the application title, and my suggestion is to add a title right away. The system will auto-generate a number for you. It's not terribly descriptive, and when I was working on multiple applications, I was finding that it was hard to remember which one I had created first and which one I had created second. You can navigate between sections by using the table of contents on the left to view the questions in the section or to fill out portions of each section. It's a long application, so save early and often. There are Save and Next and Save for Later buttons at the bottom of each screen. Save for Later is going to allow you to kind of keep going through the application even if you don't have all the information. Save and Next is only going to allow you to move forward if you've entered all of the required fields before you submit your application. If there's a required field you didn't complete, if you hit Save and Next, it won't work and it'll direct you to the field that it was entered incorrectly. You can still save for later, keep entering the information, but before you submit, you really should go back to each page and hit Save and Next as a final check. As a note, once you hit Save and Next, you won't be able to delete files from within the application pages, only add them. But you can, and there's a related tab up there on the top. If you need to delete or edit those files, you can do it from that related tab. Next slide, please. And so just a couple of general application tips. Don't forget about the program guidelines. So the portal will have questions that need to be answered, but it's actually the program guidelines that offer sort of the color, the additional information on what you should be including in your narratives. You'll likely want to have both open while you're completing the application. And if I'm being honest, when I apply for grants, I typically have the application open on one screen and the program guidelines on the other as I'm going through my application. So the other thing that we found was really helpful was completing your project workbook before you get to the budget and financial fields. So the project workbook is referenced in a number of sections. You can find it in section 9.4, which is the project budget and financial sections, but you can also find it on the CBO website or in the email that was sent out on Monday. Our experience is that completing the workbook first is going to make filling out the project budget and match section within the portal so much easier. And also pay attention to your character counts. So the text boxes are limited by characters. So if you put too much information in the text box, it will automatically truncate your entry. You can expand the text box by pulling down on the bottom right-hand corner so you're able to see everything that you've written. But that said, just like with any application, the CBO strongly recommends that you complete your application fields in an external document and cut and paste them into the portal. So you're able to spell check, you're able to check your character counts, and nothing is worse than entering a ton of text and then forgetting to save because you clicked onto another section. So this one, the next one seems really self-explanatory, but please complete all the required fields. So in the event that an upload is required and you don't have anything to upload, create a document that says either the upload is not applicable or upload something even more descriptive that says why a specific upload would not be applicable to your project and upload that document. Also, in the timeline table, if there are any tasks or milestones that are not applicable, which may happen in some cases, go ahead and put not applicable in the description and then enter dummy information for the rest of each row so that you can continue to the next step. And once you've submitted your application, you'll be able to go back and review everything that you've submitted. We also recommend that you print your application. So to print your application, you'll just go to each tab, print screen, and then save each of those files to your desktop as your formal application, your record of your application. I think that's it for me. I will pass it to Megan to talk a little bit about more of the content and the mapping in project areas.
Actually, real quick, Allie, a couple questions came up while you're talking. I think we could probably answer pretty quickly. One, can the primary user invite other users or just approve? I'm not quite sure.
Good question. The primary user can't sort of technically invite other users. You can you would just send them the link to the portal. They'll need to go through the registration process. And once they've put their information in with the TIN, then you'll get the email and then you'll be able to approve it. So you can't sort of invite from within the system. You'll need to invite from outside of the system. And they need to have the right information to be able to do it.
All right, great, thank you. And then one other question, can you change the primary contact after the application has been opened?
Yes, you can. So once the first person that logs in becomes the primary contact, just so somebody can start allowing people in, but you're able to add a new primary contact. And if that first person who registered maybe was an administrative assistant and they really don't want to be in charge of approving everyone, or they maybe don't have the right information, then you can remove them, add someone else. You just always need to have a minimum of one primary contact, and you will also need one signature authority for every grant application.
All right, great. Thanks, Sally. If there are not any other questions about the portal, we can move on to Megan. All right, go ahead, Megan.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be showing you the new BEAD application mapping tool. All right, so this is a tool that is built to help you prepare your application. It's built in a separate platform outside of the application portal, so you can work in there separately to explore things like project areas, enforceable commitments, eligible locations, and other relevant data. You'll also be able to export a CSV of your project areas so you can upload that into the application portal. So let's jump in. Attempt to do a live demo with no issues. All right. So this is the landing page that you'll see when you click on that link. This has a lot of important information like instructions on how to navigate the tool. That's this slide deck here. Below that, you'll see a whole section describing all of the data and layers that you'll find in the tool. I highly recommend reviewing this so you know what you're looking at when you get in there. And then we scroll down and you see the actual mapping tool. It's embedded here in the page and you can interact with it there. Or if you prefer, you can click on this orange button to open it in a new window, which I will do now. All right, once you're in here, you can read the splash screen and then click anywhere outside of that to clear it out of the way. The layout here, we have a summary of the selected project areas, so that'll populate with metrics once you make a selection. Below that, we have a click to add data. So if you have your own data that you want to use for reference, you can click here to add it by search, by URL, or by uploading your own file. And keep in mind, if you do load information or data into the map, it'll clear out every time you close or refresh your browser. So be careful about closing the browser window after you've loaded a bunch of data. It'll get lost when you close that. And then we'll jump into how to use the map and what these tables will look like upon selection of project areas. A couple basics of navigating the map. You can click and drag to pan around the map. And then you can either use these plus and minus buttons or your scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out. And then up here in the left corner, you have a layer and legend. So this layer list tells you all the layers that are preloaded into the map. And if you click on the legend, you can see the symbology for everything, all of the visible layers. In the layer list, if it's grayed out, that means that it's not visible at your current zoom level. So you'll need to zoom in to see some of these layers. And the eye symbol here tells you whether it's turned on or off. So this first one is turned off. I can click the eye to turn it on. All of that loads. It's very cluttered, which is why we have it turned off. But once you get zoomed into an area that you're interested in, a lot of these layers will turn on and you'll be able to see them. So I'll walk through how to select project areas. I'm zoomed in here on an area outside of Montrose. Close that legend for now. This tool with the cursor and the square is the selection tool. It'll default to the rectangle selection tool, but if you want other options, you can click this down arrow. The rectangle and the point tool, I think, are the easiest to use, so I'll demo those here. We'll start with rectangle. So I choose the rectangle tool, and all I have to do is click and drag around the project areas I'm interested in. And you see that that selected 4 project areas, which we see in the summary, consisting of a total of 22 unserved and 26 underserved locations, adding up to 48 total. So if I wanted to make that same selection using the point tool, I just need to clear the selection by clicking this X button. That clears that out. And then I can go to the point tool and I just click in the middle of one. And then I hold down my shift key while I click on the additional project areas that I'm interested in. So you can see that gave me the same list of 4 project areas with a total of 48 locations. Now let's take a look at the tables at the bottom. The first just shows all of the details of the selected project areas. So you can see I have 4 in this list. Tells you the county, and then the count of locations in various categories, along with the project area ID. The second table lists all of the eligible locations associated with those 4 project areas. And it has the project area ID, the location ID, and the eligibility classification. For this, 0 equals unserved and 1 equals underserved. So that'll be that total 48 locations that we have selected. If you wanted to download this for your records, you can click this Actions button over here on the right, and then choose Export and choose the file type you'd like to export. And then lastly, we tried to name this so it's easy to find, export this list for application. So this is what you'll want to upload into the application portal. This will just show the project area ID, and you can download this by clicking Actions, Export, and for this, choose Export to CSV because that's the format you'll need in the application portal. So I'm going to click that. My download has started. And now I will switch over to the application portal. I'm just going to scroll quickly to the section I need. All right, so when you get into the project design section, you have the question to select project areas. In here, you will click Add Project Areas. And you'll have a couple options here. One is to add by search, and one is to upload CSV. If I wanted to find those same project areas by search, I could search Montrose. Give it a minute to think. Montrose County results pop up. However, this list is limited to about, it's 20 or 25 results will load. So if you use this method, you really need to know which project area IDs you're looking for. But let's say I wanted this one. I can check the box and then click Add Project Areas. It gives me a map to confirm that I do want to add those, and I click Confirm, and that's recorded on the application interface. If that was a mistake, I can go back and remove that project area by checking that box. And you'll notice that these numbers here are 0 and these values are false. That's a known issue. So if you go into your list and everything is zeros, don't freak out. It's a known issue. We're working on it. You'll just need to know exactly which project area ID you're looking to remove if you have a large list. So if I click Remove, it gives me that confirmation screen again, and I can confirm. Now I'm back to 0 on my project areas. If I go in again, we can look at how to do the CSV upload, which I just click the CSV upload tab and then click on Upload Files. Here's my project areas that I just, oh, that's from yesterday. Here's the project areas I just downloaded. Open that. And we can see I have 4 project areas with 26 underserved and 22 unserved. The map looks the same, so I know it uploaded correctly. And I have my project areas selected. So from here, you want to make sure that you download these for your records, and that's this button over on the right. If I click download, it'll send me an email of all of the locations and project areas that I have selected. Definitely do this before you hit submit on your application. It's a lot easier to do while the application's still in progress than to get the list after the fact. So make sure you download once you've made that final selection. And I think that is all for my demo. I'll go back to the slide deck. I think I covered most of these tips in the demo, other than make sure each application covers separate project areas. So don't select the same project area in two separate applications, because those will need to be deduplicated out during the review process. All right, I felt like it talked really fast. I think I have time to take a question or two before I hand it over. Otherwise, we can handle other questions in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see any for you to answer, and no hands raised at this time. So yeah, I think we can go on to Helen.
All right.
Do have one in the chat from Richard.
Oh, yeah, that I mean, that's back to Allie. We can certainly answer that now if you want. Allie, question back to you about the portal. Richard's question is, will the existing accounts that have access to the CPF awarded projects not work for BEAD until the tax ID number is connected, even if BEAD is visible?
Yeah, Richard, great question. So you will be able to go in and apply for BEAD, no problem. You may not be able to use your existing login, right? So until those two are connected, you won't be able to see CPF on BEAD. You won't be able to see BEAD on CPF. If you have any problems, just reach out to your program manager. But if you anticipate that that's something, I'd suggest just go ahead and send an email to Ali, and we'll take care of it now, so you don't even see that hopefully tomorrow when you log in. Hopefully you'll log in first thing.
Okay, thanks from Richard. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay, then Helen, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Okay. Great, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to run through some of the fundamentals of the program now and take a specific deep dive into the information that you're going to need to submit in your applications. Okay, so starting off here with the high-level grant application timeline. So as discussed already, the application window is opening on Thursday, the 12th of September, tomorrow. The application window is for 45 days, but we're giving 46 days because it's going to be closing on Monday, the 28th of October. It is planned that application summaries will be posted to the BEAD website on the week of November 11th. This is the Colorado Advance-BEAD website. And during the application window, so you will have access to the technical support and the ongoing FAQ, and this is all outlined in the Advance-BEAD guidelines. The plan at this stage is for a single round of solicitation, depending on the coverage that is achieved. Okay, so the CBO Advance-BEAD program is going to focus solely on broadband deployment projects, and there are two types of projects that applicants can select from. The first is the Priority Broadband Deployment Project, and these are characterized as projects that employ complete fiber optic infrastructure to deliver services to every eligible end user location within the application service area. The second option is Other Last Mile Broadband Deployment Projects, and these are projects that have one or more project areas that are not served by end-to-end fiber. So these other last mile projects may combine a mix of fiber and non-fiber technologies, or they may be made up of purely non-fiber technologies. And the CBO does aim to prioritize fiber to the home, but it will consider other reliable broadband technologies, including hybrid fiber coaxial and licensed fixed wireless, followed by unlicensed fixed wireless and low Earth orbit satellite as other last mile projects. Okay. So the final BEAD eligible location list was approved by the NTIA on August the 5th. And this list includes all broadband serviceable locations that are eligible for infrastructure projects funded by the BEAD program. Applicants must propose to serve every unserved and underserved location within each project area included in their application. Applicants are also invited to include CAIs in their application, but this is with the understanding that these locations may be removed if there is insufficient budget to achieve universal coverage of unserved and underserved locations. Project areas. So the final project area map that Megan went through provides the final project areas she said that applicants can select from. Now, there isn't a maximum limit on the geographical size of projects, but the minimum project size is one project area as defined in that project area map. As noted, the project areas do not overlap, and applicants may not subdivide the project area into smaller units. So multiple project areas may be included in a single application, and it is preferred that these project areas be contiguous or a logical and reasonable extension in the overall project plan. The maximum dollar amount that may be requested in a single application is $20 million, and applicants should indicate in the project within their application the project areas that are critical and necessary to make that project viable. And just noting here that the CBO does reserve the right to partially award a proposed application in the case, for example, of overlapping proposals. So for scoring, in addition to an eligibility, completeness, and compliance review, applications will be quantitatively scored using the scoring rubric shown here. This is also outlined in CBO's initial proposal volume 2 and the Advance-BEAD guidelines. And with project prioritization, the CBO will prioritize unserved locations, then underserved locations, followed by eligible CAIs, so those community anchor institutions. The CBO aims to provide fiber to as many unserved and underserved locations as possible, but will, as discussed, consider these various broadband technologies to achieve universal coverage. Also, whilst the CBO encourages applicants to submit their most competitive fiber-only projects, it does encourage applicants to offer recommendations on how to reduce the cost of serving high-cost locations where there are cheaper technologies available. And as discussed, CAIs may be removed due to insufficient budget. Okay, so at this stage, we're going to jump into the information that applicants are going to be required to submit in their applications. So there's a number of requirements listed on the slide relating to the applicant's organization, which will require registration and or enrollment. And all of this information listed is required. So applicants are really encouraged to apply as soon as possible for any missing requirements, as application and registration times may vary for these. Awardees will need a CostQuest TRD license at the time of application, as well as to provide required reporting to the CBO. So if the applicant doesn't have a CostQuest license and or an FCC registration number, an FRN number, you can find information on registering for these in the Advance-BEAD guidelines. Okay. This section covers the applicant provider type, business classifications, including minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and labor surplus area firms. It includes proof of financial capability and key contacts for the project. Just building off Ali's point, a reminder that applicants must identify a signature authority in the application process, as they are the only ones who will be able to complete the required certifications and submit the completed submission. A signature authority refers to a person authorized to obligate and enter into contracts for the grant and the applicant agency. Okay, applicant ownership information. So the purpose of this section is to align with the NTIA NOFO requirements and 47 CFR. This regulation mandates the full disclosure of direct and indirect ownership interests. It includes details of any parties with a 10% or more stake, the nature of the interest, and the interrelationships with any FCC regulated entities. Okay, managerial capability. So this section is intended to assess the applicant's managerial capability, their project experience as an organization, and also the management team who will be responsible for the project. New entrants, just to note here, are considered as applicants with less than 2 years experience. Also to note in this section, the applicants will be required to download, complete, and upload a worksheet detailing project experience. And it's really important that this sheet includes all projects that are leveraging public grant funding sources and the last 5 years of privately funded projects. Okay. Compliance. So the compliance section covers past and future compliance with federal labor and employment law, other applicable laws, and federal obligations. In terms of defaults, past violations, and/or pending litigation, applicants are given opportunities to explain context and corrective measures that have been put in place as a result. And to note here that this does not limit an applicant's eligibility to apply. It is critical that applicants complete all requested questions and certifications to pass the completeness, eligibility, and scoring review in their applications. Okay. Procurement. So in this section, applicants must detail the organization's plan to address the 6 requirements for contracting with MBEs, WBEs, and labor surplus area firms. Applicants will need to document their approach and provide certifications of compliance with BABA, as well as certifying compliance with the prohibition on certain telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment. The certifications for both of these sections are required to be completed by all applicants, unless in the case that there is one certification that might not be applicable due to really significant sector-specific exceptions. These instances are expected to be limited to, for example, sectors like LEO, who might not be purchasing fiber. If any certification is not completed, applicants are required to provide a justification for this in an open field text box. This section also includes cybersecurity and supply chain risk management plans. It includes mandatory certifications, and a note here that if awarded, awardees will be required to submit these plans to the CBO before execution of the BEAD grant agreement. Okay. Project design. So here is a snapshot of the project data table that you're going to find in the application portal. It covers location served, infrastructure, and technology. Just a reminder here that applicants are invited but not required to include CAIs in their application. But if you do, just noting that the minimum speed to serve CAIs is 1 GB per second symmetrical. If any of these sections aren't applicable, for example, the number of towers, you can just enter a 0 into the field here, just noting that the table, all fields in the table will need to be completed before you continue with your application. Okay, technology type. So if applicants select priority broadband project as their project type, they will be selecting from the priority broadband technology types in the top box on your screen. If they choose other last mile project type, they can choose from this priority broadband technology type if some of those areas will be served by fiber. They'll also be able to choose from other last mile technology types in that bottom box, and then over to the right to select a minimum upload and download speed that is mandatory. This is also the section where applicants will be able to select their project areas, as Megan has just demonstrated. And here it is in this section as well. It's really important that applicants indicate the project areas that are crucial for the successful implementation of the proposed project. So these areas might include, for example, the core build out, such that removing them would jeopardize the viability of the project. This information is going to be used in the deconfliction considerations in the case of overlapping applications. Okay, so in this section, applicants will be asked to provide information on high-cost locations, on any fiber optic cables or conduit routes expected to be included in the network design, information on NEPA, NHPA, and climate resilience. And just a note on the high-cost BSL, so applicants will be asked to confirm if there are any locations in their proposed project areas that are prohibitively expensive to serve. If so, you'll be prompted to provide a narrative on how to reduce the cost of serving these high-cost locations through cheaper technologies, and to enter the information on the high-cost BSLs tab in the project financials workbook. This is applicable for applicants applying both for priority and other last mile projects where there are high-cost locations with cheaper technology alternatives available. Okay. High-level network design. So this slide lays out the minimum requirements applicants must include in their high-level network designs. If awarded, awardees will be required to submit final detailed network designs post-award that is certified by a licensed professional engineer. But at this application stage, applicants should ensure that preliminary designs cover all of the requested information in order for the CBO to do a sufficient review and assessment. Okay, timeline. So deployment of the broadband network and service initiation to each subscriber must occur within 4 years from the award date by the CBO. In the application portal, applicants will be required to complete the timeline and key milestones table that you can see here. The phases cover planning, design, installation, and acceptance, and applicants will need to include expected start and completion dates and responsible party for each of the milestones and tasks within each phase. It is expected that all of these tasks and milestones will be applicable for most applicants, but if there are rows that are not applicable for LEO applicants, for example, you'll just need to enter not applicable into the responsible party box. You will still need to enter some dummy dates in the expected start and completion dates, though, in order to be able to continue with this application. So just noting that everything in this table needs to be filled in. And then lastly, in this section, applicants must provide a narrative of any supply chain issues that may impact the timeline of this project and a plan to overcome them. Okay, permits and critical crossings. So the portal requires applicants to identify all required permits and critical crossings in their application and provide the information that you can see here on the screen. This includes all necessary federal, state, and local permits, as well as any approvals relevant to NEPA and NHBA. The permits themselves may be submitted after execution of the grant agreement if awarded. And I think if any applicants are looking for more information on CDOT right-of-way or forest services permitting processes, you can take a look at the Advance-BEAD website. There's a recent webinar that's been posted there. Okay, so open access. Applicants will be asked to confirm if they'll provide an open access network and then provide related information such as the open access policy, wholesale services and rates, and the status of contract negotiations with retail ISP partners. If applicants are unable to provide an open access network, they'll be asked to provide a justification. Affordable rate, applicants must also offer and outline their affordable rate. This excludes the low-cost service option and promotional rates and needs to be viable throughout the federal interest period. And then low-cost service options. So awardees are obligated to offer a low-cost service option to all eligible customers throughout the useful life of the BEAD-funded network. Unless a waiver is granted by the CBO, the low-cost plan offered by awardees shall not exceed $30 a month. And to note, this is for tribal and non-tribal lands. The low-cost service option qualifications for subscribers should be substantially similar to the qualifications that were allowed under ACP. And in the event that there are any applicable subsidies for awardees are required to accept them. And noting here as well that ISPs who do participate in the Lifeline program may also use the Lifeline program to qualify subscribers, as well as to provide the Lifeline subsidy. Okay. Project workforce. So this section is going to ensure that applicants will commit a skilled, credentialed workforce that provides equitable development and job quality. The workforce plans at the application stage can be preliminary, but will need to be finalized upon execution of the grant agreement. But again, preliminary workforce plans should be as complete as possible at this stage to ensure the CBO can conduct a thorough review and assessment. Applicants will need to certify compliance with either the Davis-Bacon Act or provide a project employment and local impact report prior to execution of the grant agreement. So in the application portal, only one of these options needs to be selected. This section will also focus on unionized and subcontracted workforce and prioritization of local hires. Okay, community impact and engagement. So applicants will be asked to select and upload evidence of their progress of engaging with local and tribal governments. And this will be in the form of letters of support or endorsement, proof of meetings if letters of support have not yet been received, or evidence of 3 attempts to contact if these meetings have not yet taken place. It is expected that in almost every application that this will require engagement with at least local government, so applicants are advised to make as much progress as possible in the engagement process for their application. Applicants intending to construct on tribal lands and territories will be required to provide the name of the tribes in whose territory the project will conduct activities, and a resolution of consent or reciprocity or an equivalent formal demonstration of consent. On the right-hand side, you can see that applicants will also be asked to provide narratives on how their projects support state priorities and plans. Okay, project budget and financial. So financial surety. Applicants have two options to provide financial surety in the Advance-BEAD program. Option 1 is the performance bond and labor and materials payment bond at a value of 100% of the subaward. Option 2 is a letter of credit at the value of 10% of the subaward and an opinion letter. If applicants select option 1 at the application stage, you'll need to submit a letter of surety for the performance bond and labor and materials bond that at a minimum provides the dollar amount equal to the cumulative total amount across all of your proposed projects. If applicants select option 2, at the application stage, you'll need to submit an irrevocable standby letter of credit and a value of no less than 10% of the cumulative sub-award total across all of your proposed projects. And just noting here that under the NTAA NOFO and guidance, the bonds or letters of credit must be obtained by awardees prior to the execution of the grant agreement. And then just very quickly on this slide as well on matching funds, just a reminder that a minimum match of 25% of the total project cost is required unless a waiver is granted. An in-kind match is not allowable under the Advance-BEAD program. Okay, a project financials workbook with a number of worksheets will be provided for download and upload in the application portal. And as Ali said, is also published on the website and was sent out in the email earlier this week. It is critical that all worksheets and data requests are completed for every application, as incomplete workbooks may be disqualified during the completeness review. I think, as Ali mentioned, it's a great idea to complete the workbook before completing the summary, and it's really important that the summary information matches that data in the workbook. There is one small difference just to note. There is a relocation expenses row in the application portal. Please keep this as 0 as this has been deemed an ineligible cost. You won't find this row in the project financials workbook. And just last on this slide, I'm conscious of time, and when looking at this budget and the budget considerations, it is really critical that applicants offer their best and final offer for the true cost of a reliable and feasible project. Okay, very last slide, certification. So as we've said, there are certifications throughout the application portal and then a list of certifications at the end. Really stressing the importance here that all certifications must be completed before submission. I know we've mentioned there are limited specific cases where these might not be applicable and opportunities to provide justification, but we do advise applicants that unless there are very highly specific and justifiable reasons not to complete certifications, these may be considered as incomplete. So thank you. I realize that was a lot of information. That concludes the section on information upload in the application portal.
Thanks, Helen. I know that is a lot to go through. We do have some time for Q&A, and I'm going to start with one that came in through the chat, which, Ali, I think this one is for you. So someone is asking for clarification on the section 7.91.1, which is project match. So specifically, they're asking what comprises inventory match and what documentation is required.
Okay, great. Yeah, great. That's a great question. So a couple of resources for you. The use of inventory on BEAD projects is addressed in our facts document. It's facts number 4.2 and 8.1, but just to add a little bit of more color to that. So inventory would be billed, if you will, as if it were normally billed for any material expense. There's an additional requirement for explanation of how inventory is tracked and valued. It needs to be based on GAAP best practices, so general accounting best practices, which means you'll need to submit, this would be post-award, right? So you'll need to submit documentation on how you account for your inventory, right? What your inventory system is. Do you use a first in, first out process, and how do you value and what does that look like? So that documentation would come if you were selected for award post-award. I did want to add a couple of reminders. So one of the reminders is that inventory is subject to all grant requirements. So that includes Build America, Buy America. So, and then if the inventory is purchased prior to the execution of the grant award, you need written approval from your grant manager to be able to use it. So just so like that inventory gets a little funky in a couple of places there. But in response to your specific match question, how you would account for it in match, you'd account for it just like any other sort of normal expenditure. So if you're if you're billing $20,000, for example, for fiber, that fiber is coming from inventory. You've given us the backup for how you value your inventory. That $20,000 would be billed on your request for payment, and your required match percentage, say, is 25%. You'll request reimbursement for the $15,000, and then $5,000 will be applied to your match requirement. So it'll happen just the way you would submit any invoice, if you will, for expenses, and then that with a little bit of additional backup, simply because we won't have an invoice, if you will, to be able to match up for it. So we'll ask for your inventory valuation. I will stop there just to see if you have if that answered your question, or if you have any additional questions.
Okay.
Hi, Allison. Yep, I'm just sorry, I'm muting here. I typed it in the
Okay,
chat while
go
the
ahead.
webinar was going on. Yep, that provided a lot of clarity for us. Thank you.
Okay, good. Perfect.
All right. You can take more questions, and you can raise your hand to ask, or you can drop them in the chat, and I will fumble my way through them. But yeah, we have about 9 minutes, so lots of time for you guys to ask questions about what's on your mind.
Hey, Lauren, we have a bunch in the chat. We could probably just roll through, answer questions. I know we're responding, but there's a few others in the chat.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to read the next one in the chat. From Kim, is there a max on the amount of inventory that can be used for match?
We just answered that one.
Not quite. This is a little
No?
bit of a different question. So
Okay.
a max on the amount of inventory that can be used for match, not really, but there are some requirements around inventory. Specifically, there are requirements around pre-award expenditures. So the idea would be that if you already had inventory and you had purchased it maybe to try and get ahead of some supply chain issues before you had an executed award, there are some requirements around that. So there are requirements for equipment, how long that, if it's electronics, there are some pieces of electronics, if they're old, we won't allow them to be used. We want to make sure that the projects are modern and quality. So there isn't a hard and fast limit to inventory, but there are some requirements around inventory that were you to be awarded, to be pre-award expenses that you'll need to know about.
Okay, great. Thank you, Allie. All right, next question. Is there a document that lists the word count limits in the application portal?
Yeah, so there's no sort of external document that lists all of the word count limits, but as soon as you're able to log in, my suggestion would be to go into each section, highlight it, cut it, paste it into a separate document. And when you do that, all of the word counts will come across. So you'll be able to see them all. You can sort of create your own document if you want, however you want to do that, but that's where they'll be. They'll be listed in the portal very clearly. You'll be able to just transfer them over to your own document if that's something that you want to do and work in that external document.
Okay, thank you, Allie. This one came up in the chat and it was answered, but I'm just going to read it aloud so everyone gets the information. That says, will the certifications be a template for upload, or is it a checkbox in the portal? And Kristen confirmed that they are checkboxes in the portal. So just want to make sure that everybody saw that and got that information. Let's see. I'm looking to see. I think we've got to all of them in the chat. Kristen, right?
There's one about Tier D. Just Doug asked about the Tier D county, the license for
Yeah, we do not know the answer to that. And so as I told him, we will get back to him in the FAQ.
Okay.
Okay. Megan said, further clarification, the fields are limited by character count, not word count. It's probably important in detail. Thanks, Megan. Okay. What other questions do you guys have? We have about 5 more minutes left. I don't see other questions coming into the chat. We can certainly wait just a minute. And while we do that, Megan, if you want to go to the next screen too, that has the email address. There you go. Okay, thank you. One did come in as well. Is there a planned training for the workbook? We don't have one planned, correct, team?
We don't have one planned, no. But yeah, we don't have one.
I'd say if you have questions on the workbook, the programs team is probably the best to reach out to. And I'm just speaking on the fly here. So Jonas, let me know if you have a different route, but I think they're probably the best to reach out to if you've got questions. I know CBO can help answer questions on workbooks. They'd have to be individual, one-on-one kind of time working together. So
yeah, we also have office hours if you have general questions. So pop into those. I think it's every Monday at 2 p.m. If you do have general questions on any of the application, or how to use the portal, how to use maps, how to find information.
yeah, thanks, Megan. There are a couple of state holidays that fall on a Monday, so the schedule itself is listed out on the BEAD webpage, which Kristen just dropped into the chat. Thank you, Kristen. So just to double check the schedule. But yeah, most Mondays will be available for office hours. And then this website that's on the screen, this email address that's on the screen is, you can send any questions that ever pop into your head to that email address, and someone from CBL will respond to you promptly. We have a couple more minutes just in case there are any other questions people want to ask. We'll give it another minute, and then Jonas, I'll let you kind of wrap us up and send us
Lauren,
out.
one thing I just want to tell folks on the call too is that we're gonna have because I saw on here like a guide to the portal and stuff. We will have some helpful tips on how to navigate the portal too. We're working on that for you as well, and that'll be listed on our website. So just a little bit more supplemental information for you guys as you work your way through the portal. So we'll have that available.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us, Brandy. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I will turn it to Jonas to share final thoughts.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, there's a lot of information about this. So just to echo what Brandy said, if you have questions, go to our website first, see if you can find the information there. If not, feel free to reach out to any of the resources that we've posted. Take advantage of the office hours and anything else that we have available. We're happy to help. But more than anything, we're excited about the portal opening up tomorrow. We're excited to get your applications. And we can't thank you enough for all your support and time that you have invested into this process so far. And together, we'll get through this, get this across the finish line, and meet our goals for expanding broadband across Colorado. So once again, thank you very much, everyone, for your time and support, and we'll be in touch.